Hello friends, welcome back to the Mago channel and the flow of the story, which is unfolding beautifully, unfolding deep hidden truths of our past and our present, and obviously thus suppressing the possibilities of our future. So let's uncover our true past and what's been going on that is fogging our understanding of ourselves. So from my book Mago 1, which I've been already talking about, beginning with the story of the king. In the story of the king, there's a long section about forged history and erased past, and also the great conspiracy, and these things obviously are connected because history is forged by those who make up the body of the great conspiracy, the conspirators, because we have to face it's the great conspiracy in history is not an abstract phenomenon. It's a very real thing that started at one point as and is going on. It's been going on for millennia and it's still going on. And there are perpetrators, there are faces, there are names of individuals and groups that are around even today, but this has been going on for a long time. So it's already a system, it's a dark system, the great conspiracy, which is forging, like one of its main tools of control and manipulation is the forging of reality, forging of our understanding, our even perception of who we are and what's going on, and also forging our past. This has been a tool of all the great empires, the great bloody empires. It's been the tool to clean up their own doings and thus forge history and forge the past of the people whose land and culture they're taking away. I'm not even saying since Rome, because it started beforehand. It started in Mesopotamia, the Persian Empire, then the Greek Empire, then the Roman Empire, then the Holy Roman, the German Roman Empire, and then the newer empires, the British Empire, the American Empire. They're doing exactly the same thing. They're forging history. They're forging our history and our past and present, so that we can have no proper future. So this is why the forgery of history is so important. And instead of being spontaneous in this case, in this little video, I decided to take my book and I'm just gonna quote from it and read to you what I think are really key things in our understanding of ourselves. So in my chapter called Forged History, Erased Past, which in the book it comes from the story of the king, because the king's story and the king's country's story, the kingdom of the Mag, has been so deeply manipulated and forged that it's impossible to even talk about it without clarifying the true past. But this should be applied to all of our histories. We are so in need of truth, and there's just no way of talking about anything. There's no way of politics and history going on like this when it's just full of lies and falsities. There's no way. So there should be like a stop and pause in the whole flow of human history and politics to realize what's going on and what's been going on. So, forged history, erased past. So I'll just pick out quotes, parts of sentences, expressions here for you. Memory delete. The propaganda of a forged human identity, forged racial, national, cultural, religious, and linguistic identity, a forged history, and forged historical sites. This is another key thing. Forged historical sites. I've already been mentioning the holy center of the Magyar, the Hungarian Empire. I mean, cities have been completely erased, and even their memory erased. So imagine if cities, sites, the holiest sites and key places have been erased, then, it's like an overall action to erase our connection with our ancestors, our past, but also it's our reality. So, the truth about humanity as a whole has been erased and forged. Erasure of memory and spoon-fed falsities. Brainwashing is going on all levels and in all ways. Deceit and deception, conscious, systematic, and aimed. In all fields of life, knowledge and belief. By who? By whom? We shall see. So what is the official false version of our common history? That humans have evolved from animals, our ancestors are rather primitive cavemen, hunters and gatherers motivated primarily by animal instincts of survival and fear. That we came directly from the apes. That Mesopotamian civilization was the first one. That Hammurabi's laws were the first. Okay, I'm not even gonna, etc., etc. So many falsities, specific and general. So many things. Jesus, specifically, literally Jesus, so forged. Humanity is burdened with millennia of forged history and erased past. The entire falsely self-appointed Semitic, Jewish and Muslim, then pseudo-Christian narrative, an aggressive expansion and colonization is followed by the forged base narrative of the Bible and the falsely boastful, hypocritical and cynical Indo-European narrative of history. A great part of history itself, our identity, is based on manipulated evidence, forged chronicles, false interpretations, cut up and mashed up books such as the Bible, and basically all historical events, since the winners win and write history without moral scruples. Great conspiracy to mislead humanity from our original freedom, divine nature, and the understanding of the actual events into slavery, base nature, and a false narrative veil over the ongoing economic, political, and social criminalism. Why? We shall see. There's a beautiful George Orwell quote, which of course many of you know from his novel 1984, "Who controls the past controls the future, who controls the present controls the past." Another Orwell quote, "The most effective way to destroy people is to deny and obliterate their own understanding of their history." How true and how key, right? I'm jumping over things. Indians of the world, this is something that I coined. All subordinated colonized nations have the same fate of the underdog. These are the Indians of the world, whose glorious past and great ancient culture was erased. The story of their colonization sold as progress, liberation, and enlightenment, all evidence misinterpreted, manipulated, damaged, or altogether destroyed. Hungary is such a subordinated Indian reserve of Europe, a colonized, trampled First Nation, and an abused ancient Holy Land. But this is true for all subordinated First Nation high civilizations. Indians, the Scythians of Albion, the Hun Germans and Vikings, the Scythian Gauls, Hispanians, Etruscans, pre-ancient Greeks, Magyars, Scythian and Hun Slavs, the Magyar, Hun, and Scythian nations all across the Near and Middle East, the originally Sumerian Magyar Semites, the Han, Chinese and Japanese, Scythian Pali, Magyar Dravidians, and so on, are all Indians, all First Nations naturally connected. I already talked about the three basic tribal types recurring all around the globe, which derives from the seedness of humanity, making up one single body, and that is like a seed, structured like a seed, which is a beautiful, beautiful, it's not a notion, it's a reality that we have abandoned. Entire civilizations lost, like Lemuria and Atlantis. Entire empires and cities have been erased all over the world. Something very special. To give us an exact description of the colonial mentality and methodology, here Lord Macaulay, British MP's address to the British Parliament, 2nd of February 1835, boasting of the shame of the British Imperium. Please hear. "I have traveled across the length and breadth of India, and I have not seen one person who is a beggar, who is a thief. Such wealth I have seen in this country, such high moral values, people of such caliber, that I do not think we would ever conquer this country unless we break the very backbone of this nation, which is her spiritual and cultural heritage, and therefore I propose that we replace her old and ancient education system, her culture, for if the Indians think that all that is foreign and English is good and greater than their own, they will lose their self-esteem, their native culture, and they will become what we want them, a truly dominated nation." By a British MP about the Indians. But this is so general. This is true for the Americas, for the Australian Aborigines, for all the First Nations, all the ancient high civilizations, the cultures, the keepers were trampled and raped in the very same way, humiliated, and robbed in the same exact way. Okay, jumping over some parts of text. It seems a secret history, the story of the underdog never told. Okay, the scale of historical forgery rivals the scale of the physical devastation committed by the colonial empires. And these are, as we already said, but let me just emphasize it again, these are the patriarchal colonial empires that are the perpetrators of historical forgery and shameful robbery, not only of physical goods, but but psychological and intellectual wealth of the underdog. Can we recognize our current disintegration, disorientation, and alienation, and our original holistic nature, laws, and needs? Big question. But of course, my answer would be yes, because it's written that the golden age has to follow the great darkness. So, to quote more, the list of culturally identifying looted, stolen treasures could be endless, from Baghdad through to St. Petersburg, across all great Western museums full of invaluable reliquiae of forged histories and erased pasts, full of stolen identities, stolen lives. Okay, Hungarian Inquisition and court case records against Magi. We'll talk about this later. Attempted manipulation and false history and identity of language. We will talk about it in great lengths throughout Mago. Manipulation not only of history and identity, but also language, which carries history and identity. So the manipulation of languages is actually key, because that's when the gates were really flung open to brainwashing and control and usurpation once languages were hacked, primarily with the gender. We will go into it in great detail. But actually, okay, one specific thing. How deep this goes, and how evil. The Grimm Brothers' 19th century collection of stories was one of the great scams of world literature. It was the conscious, systematic forgery and poisoning of the collective psyche. Common criminality, it's more, the poisoning, rape, and murder of innocence and truth, and absolute sacrilege. Okay, not going to go into it, but the Grimm Brothers' so-called collection of folktales is an absolute scam. It's conscious manipulation of an entire nation's, the German nation's, psyche. Think about it. Okay, manipulation of the Hungarian Holy Crown. Talked about the crown already. It's been manipulated to destroy evidence. Image of Virgin Mother changed, forged images replacing 3 original ones in the back of the crown. Okay, I'm not going to go into it any further, but okay, one little extra piece of information, that when the Holy Crown was again for the 100th time was stolen, taken out of the country in the 20th century, it was taken to the States, to the United States, and it was kept there and obviously meddled with. And then when the crown was sent back finally in the 70s to Hungary, due to very, very interesting mystical circumstances, and there's a whole story behind like why the Holy Crown was sent back from the States to communist Hungary. When they sent it back, on the box it said radioactive object. So the Hungarian magical Holy Crown, which, as I said, it's a portal, it's an energy gate, not an object, but an entity. It's an operating magical tool, basically, but a living tool, right? So an initiatory passage when they sent it back even the Americans said it's a radioactive object. So, and now my book, Mago 1, goes into, ta-da, like who the perpetrators are and were and are. So, the enemy, the great conspiracy, and the secret war, which is going on. So what is the bad tradition? Who is the enemy? Again, I'm just gonna quote, gender he, she appears in the Semitic language family. Note that none of the ancient indigenous languages have linguistic gender, as we have already said many times. Okay, this is gonna be the Sumeria, 4,000 years ago, so around 2000 BC in the Near East, in the Sumeria, also called Mesopotamia. That's when the crack of the Mag, the seed, took place. And there's the figure of Abraham, and there's the Semitic language, which is deeply, deeply cracked, even more cracked than the Indo-European, because there the personal pronouns, even the you is broken into two genders. So the division, the divide is really deep in the psyche there. And the schism, the racial schism, was also categorical and very deep. Not going to go into it because that's Sumeria and that's going to be Mago 2. But let me just show you that this is how the seed is cracked by gender, and then by the whole establishment afterwards, obviously, as a conclusion. So, a dark cloud over the minds of men. This is the Dark Empire, and it began with breaking the Mag, the original Semitic tradition. Okay, Sem means eye, as well as seed and grain in Magyar. Our radix Sem, kept, is meaning as seed grain. Okay, so the so-called Semitic tradition, which appears then, is actually the anti-Semitic, because it's the seed-breaking tradition. Secret, deep, dark state, which caused the fall of the Sumerian Empire, the Egyptian, Median, Parthian, or the great original magic high cultures and civilizations, caused the fall of Europe, Asia, fall of medieval Hungary, Americas, India, Pacific, Africa, until the total crisis of today. Okay. Mesopotamia, Babylon, Babylonian Empire, turned their back on the basic law of love, honest goodwill, and justice. Dark matter of money appeared. Whoops. Jewish patriarchal, social, and religious coup. Let's call it Semitic, or actually anti-Semitic, Semitic. When power money appeared, when Acadia sprang from Sumeria, when Abraham left Ur and killed the goddess and the feminine, when Sargon began the jihad, when curses were introduced into the places of blessing, when Babylonian magic was stolen, and when the Mag-breaking Semitic language model broke away from the original Mag model, is the same exact time, place, and situation. Say no more, please. We'll return to this in Mago 2. It was in the 12th and 13th centuries, okay, jump, but we will see the continuation of the cracking of the seed and the spreading of the virus program through these patriarchal empires, colonial empires. But now we jump into the Middle Ages, 12th and 13th century, that the invisible Dark Empire took shape in new imperial monetary rule, making the kingdoms and citizens of Europe indebted. The two great arms of this darkness, Byzantium in the east and the Holy Roman Empire in the west. By the 13th century, two banking clans ruled the west, the Fugger-Welser houses in the north and the Medicis in the south. They ruled with currencies, rates, speculation and manipulation, interest and compound interest, power money, corruption, driving people and institutions of power into debt, bankruptcy, and then buying their positions. They also gained positions through their conscious political marriages. Self-interest above all, self-interest is God. An unsustainable mentality and disposition. An interest-based system as opposed to the love-based system, etc. Okay. Beginnings of this conspiracy. Okay, Abraham the schismatic, who drew an unpassable line between Abrahamic and non-Abrahamic, man and woman, man and God. Linguistic gender with its either-or problematic. Okay, this is redundant. Great schism. Abraham killed the living source of life, the goddess, true. Her energy, her magic, her power, her memory. Patriarchy began with its program of division and subordination, abuse of the woman, nature, the natural order, a program of systematic aggression, basic axiomatic deception and lies, forgery of historical truth. Okay. Akkadian Empire was the first to be founded on killing, stealing, and lying. War. So these are the traits of the Great Conspiracy and its doing. So the program of the seed breaking. War, genocide, expansion, money, patriarchy, usurped human and natural resources, classes, races, usurped female sex, hardcore materialism, rule of the physical, rational, linear, square, speculative, consumable, manipulated and hidden truth, and a monstrous body of lies sold as religion, history, and reality. Monstrous systems of deception, exploitation, and repression. Akkadian, Assyrian, Persian, Athenian, Roman empires, the Islamic Empire, the Holy Roman Empire of Europe, and the Vatican. The invisible Talmudic Empire. And the USA, Europe, Russia, and China. And the rest. Monster states, beasts of the greater beast, the entire paradigm of division and subordination. They are all different forms of the same darkness, the same misprogrammed system, rooted in neuro-linguistic programming, the language programs dissident from the original and common map program, as we have seen already indeed. Secret historical war between the children of light and the children of darkness, war of language programs, yes. Spectacular separation between dark and light in history and politics among people. Okay. Interest-based banks appeared. The concept of me, mine, private property, my money, my interest, my friends, my tribe. Mine. Trust in capital and interest, consumption and accumulation, and mistrust in God, the other person, and all things invisible and subtle. Faithlessness and guilt. Banking. The basis of banking is compound interest or usury, which is a manipulation with time for personal profit at the cost of someone else's loss. So even before it is a moral question, it is primarily a philosophical, ontological problem. Problem? A nonsense. Okay. Subconscious guilt is compensated by aggression. The lack of wholeness, holiness, the loss of connection and liberty is compensated by ruling the world. Banking, like warring, is ontologically, spiritually, and so fundamentally illegal, illegitimate. It has created a demented global system and society. Okay. Then Mago, my book, goes into medieval details. The Bardi and Peruzzi families dominated banking in the 14th century Florence. Okay, how they bought their way into power. Bardi and Peruzzi, Fugger and Medici families. Later the Welser, Berenberg and Rothschild families. All branches of the same trees, all descendants of Abraham. Fraud and corruption, lying, stealing, cheating is the unholy trinity of corruption. Banker Medici's, just look at the faces. Banker Fuggers, kind of insane rulers of everything including politics. These houses and their descendants, such as the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers, assert one single influence on the Europe and the whole world, once united, free and prosperous. This influence is the money trap, which is a trick of time and relative value, forged narrative, fairy tales about themselves and about everyone and everything, a set-up global show. And the body trap, which is the heightened urge to gain, secure, and consume. All three of these has grown into monstrous proportions by today, causing the ecological, social, and economic crisis. Circle of military industry, big pharma, consumption, entertainment, and education industries, the economic and political industries are all parts of one grand, insanely cynical reality show. A global system which feeds the animals, 8 billion people on Earth today, controls them, shears them, and finally kills and eats them. For a life not lived freely is a life not lived. It is living death. Okay. The Habsburg branch is the most exposed, vile, and scheming political family, backed by the money families, following a strict strategy of influence, increase, and expansion. Familial multiplication and the aim of global rule. Okay. I'm not going to go into the Habsburgs here, I think. This was in the 19th century. Okay, volume of an encyclopedia that stated facts about the Habsburgs. Okay. Okay, who the Habsburgs were, I already mentioned in a previous episode. Not going to go into it, but it's actually all forged identities. They lie about themselves. They lie about themselves and about everything else. Pierre Leones used mafia tactics to gain power. Okay. Names chosen, even the names chosen for the families demonstrate their key tactic of forgery: blatant, cynical lying, cheating, stealing. I mean, these are all false names. Greed, occultism used to mean real virtues to signify true power and sight, but stolen, and names, right? Talking about the names of these families. Meanings stolen, and virtues, false virtues implied. Funded the Stafford Emperor Friedrich II's war for the throne. How the Habsburgs got into power, snuck their way, bought their way into power. Okay, this is one of the worst cases here. The arch enemy of our hero King Matthias, descendant of a family of Roman Jewish money changers who took the name Pierre Leone and later Habsburg, is Friedrich III, Holy Roman Emperor, Lord of Europe, and his son and heir Maximilian, also a rare specimen of inner and outer ugliness. Habsburgs are completely pathological, degenerate as well. Inbreeding was typical. Sick inbreeding of royal dynasties. Okay, collective karma is one of the darkest. Collective psyche most ill. The 15th century was when the political tool of mass propaganda came into use with printing. Okay. Manipulated and manipulative media, church and academia, so-called deep state or secret state above states. Money network and propaganda machinery. The Habsburgs also operated an information network or secret agency as well, having spies everywhere, watching everyone. And this will find its way into more popular history in that, as I've already mentioned, the wife of King Matthias, who was a spy, spying for the Habsburg Emperor. And then she finally assassinated the king, and she is our favorite Mona Lisa. Okay. Spies everywhere, monetary and political conspirators themselves, greater conspiracy, conscious and evil, hidden and coordinated greater action plan to rule the world, consisting of middle scales, such as the cooperation between the Ottoman and Habsburg empires to crush and devour the small independent nations within, between and around them, to destroy cosmic natural religions, original or organic cultures and languages. Okay. Power money. Right? Machiavelli's The Prince, written around 1513. This is all lying, cheating, and stealing. All means are allowed and justified by the cause of winning. Great. So this is, there's already the ideology for corruption, basically, and for immoral politics. The very unhandsome Niccolo Machiavelli rolled out the red carpet for the Medicis and their like. It provided and canonized the ideology for cynical, immoral politics. A handbook of being bad, cunning, and successful. Okay. The Eastern-Western unity of evil, one empire, is my suggestion that I already mentioned, that the Ottoman and the Habsburg empires were actually coordinated on some higher level. Rome, Holy Roman Empire, Byzantine, Ottomans, one. Map. Then there we have the Ottoman Emperor Sultan Muhammad II. Total control and rule of Europe was accomplished. Read more further. A new mid-scale plan was implemented in the 18th century. In 1717, the secret organization of the deep state became apparent in the establishment of Freemasonry in England. In 1773, Mayer Amschel Rothschild, founder of the Rothschild banking dynasty in the footsteps of the medieval banking houses of the same bloodline, belief, and goal, held a gathering in Frankfurt and proposed a 25-point manifesto to his 12 guests, the richest and most influential man of the time. The manifesto is a cynical, evil, explicit, and direct directive of gaining total power of the world over the world by subduing the people completely, etc., etc. Consecutively, in 1776, the Order of the Illuminati was established by Adam Weishaupt to control the Freemasons, who were already counting circa 3 million members at that time. The aim, of course, was total rule and sacking of the world, wrapped in dark occult ritualism, a conscious transformation of light into darkness, a constant forgery and mimicry. Okay, and in 1789, the French so-called revolution took place. In truth, it was an organized elite coup, brutal, ruthless, hypocritical, and cynical, and the European so-called Enlightenment was introduced. In truth, it was a conscious darkening. As the next step, etc. Okay, great conspiracy, misprogrammed system of golem running amok. One single deep state organization, one single conspiracy since Abraham. Okay. Yikes. Two of the most consciously evil Habsburgs absolutely ruling and manipulating Hungarian and European politics later. Maria Theresa and her son. Yikes. Giant network, biblical great beast like a serpent. It sucks the life out of the world, emitting only poison, lies, slander, devastation, injustice, hate, and fear. The aim of the organization of people forming the great beast is to devour the whole world, first and foremost to gain control of the world's key energy points and holy places and key resources such as water, gas, oil, gold, etc. The basis and background of the great beast seems to be the banks, but in truth, the real mastermind and control freak of the system is the religious caste, with the Talmud as the book of law. Extremes of division and subordination in their social, political, religious concept, attitudes, and systems. Leadership. So the three basic strata of the system are the cynical, manipulative, ruthless leadership, the aggressive, conquering army, and the oppressive, corrupt, parasitic social, political, economic, and religious program and its executive system spreading like a disease. Organization. Underneath and above states and nations, underneath in terms of secrecy and above in terms of control and rule. System is a forged magical system. Hierarchy and network of power, pyramid of dark power. Okay, their methods: media, manipulation, false chronicles, fear, poison, mimicry, disguised propaganda machine, the inversion of truth, discreditation, defamation, slander, and demonization of their enemies is a typical method. Okay. The whole world empire is a perfectly conscious and perfectly malevolent force, construction, and tendency. You cannot be naive. One should not be naive at all. Okay, there is an aspect of hypnosis. First, Christian love, heaven and hell, then rationalist evolution, development, liberty, equality, fraternity, and last, democracy, technology, and welfare are the illusion, the trap. Subdivisions of the dark conspiracy. Okay. Top elite, 5% or 1%, different versions. 95 or 99% of the wealth, with 20 or 1% of the population, 100% of power, and 0% of the production. Right. 0% power and 100% production belongs to the lower classes, us. Physical, mental, spiritual power dealt with by physical, mental, and spiritual elites. So it's a very, very precisely constructed system based on magic and the Mag, but in an occult way for the wrong reasons, for the wrong purpose. The storefront figures and the invisible background figures. Okay. Okay. The Great Beast, Empire of Darkness. The manipulation of the world machine and creation of a dark empire in the mysterious Rohanci Codex. This one, and there's another beautiful medieval illustration of snakes creating a pyramid, which is the deep state creating a structure of power. A large family of pathological maniacs and that degenerate psychopaths rule Europe. They have an empire. 3 main pillars of the Dark Empire. As in Rome, so in all dark empires before and since. 1. Divide and rule. Divide et impera. So divide and rule. It's one. It's very, very typical. Division. You divide your enemy. You make a division. You create a fiction between them. And thus rule them. And there are so many examples of this. Just imagine wars right now between brothers, between cousins. It's a method of the enemy to divide them and rule. The second, panem et circenses, is bread and circus for the people. In general, money is bread and false history, forged realities, and primitive entertainment is circus. Feed them crap. And thus rule them. And 3, ve victis, woe to the losers, implying the total rule and destruction of the conquered, vanquished underdogs, be they racial, social, or sexual. Okay. cynicism, secret war behind all wars in the world are masterminded, maintained, and conducted by the children of darkness. Great conspiracy of darkness. I don't think I want to add anything extra. There's so much more, but we will see throughout our historical flow of Mago how the Great Conspiracy was actually specifically born and how it developed and spread. The bad program spread throughout history to the ruin of us all. So thank you for your attention. To be continued. Peace.